Hey guys, it's me Jack and I'm back with another review. Happy Canada Day. Today is the day that I celebrate my country. A country that I am very proud to call home. That's not to say that we're perfect by any means. We've had a pretty checkered history. But in spite of all that, I still have a lot of love for the Great White North. And today I thought I would review one of my favorite movies set in Canada, 49th Parallel. Released in 1941 and made by the famous filmmaking duo of Michael Powell and Emmerich Pressburger, the film is about a group of Nazis who get stranded in Canada and must make their way into the United States, who at the time weren't in the war. This film is very interesting because ultimately it's a propaganda movie. And yet, as a propaganda movie, it does things a lot differently than one would expect. The Canadians are not the main characters. The Nazis are. It's one of those stories where the main characters are the bad guys. There's also the fact that the Nazis themselves are not one-dimensional. And I can imagine this would have been rather controversial at the time. Hell, it would probably be controversial even now. But the truth of the matter is, even the most evil people are still, well, people. Funnily enough, the Nazi who is basically the main character of the movie, Lieutenant Hirth, is the most evil out of all of them. He's a loathsome, arrogant bastard. A man completely blinded by hatred. But even he isn't without some humanity. When the character of Johnny, a French-Canadian trapper, is dying, he gives him one last drink before he dies. None of this changes the fact that he's an awful human being. But it shows that very few people are truly pure evil. The character of Vogel is easily the most human of all the Nazis, showing genuine regret over the people that he's killed. When he meets up with a bunch of Germans who are living in Canada, he starts to befriend them and connect with them. There's a good scene where he talks about how a good person like him ended up in such a horrible and hate-filled group. How he joined the army out of desperation. And how he longs for his old, simple life. When he is offered to live with these other Germans in Canada, he happily accepts. And at first you're thinking that things might actually turn out okay for him. But alas, it's not to be. The other Nazis find out and have him shot. Another great thing about this movie is that the Canadians aren't one-dimensional either. There's the character of Johnny, a French-Canadian played by Laurence Olivier, who at first has no idea that Canada is even at war. And he doesn't really understand why Canadians, particularly French Canadians, would risk their lives to save the Polish. Yet in spite of that, when he is confronted by the Nazis, who tell them that they plan to liberate the French Canadians from the British government, he stands up to them, stating that they're doing just fine as they are. I will say, though, while Laurence Olivier is a great actor, this is not one of his stronger performances. And a lot of that has to do with his ridiculously exaggerated French accent. It definitely shows how much times have changed. If this film was made nowadays, they would probably get an actual French-Canadian actor to play this character.
Albert! Comment ça va, mon vieux? You old walrus! By golly, it's Danny to see you! Here, when did you get in? 1/2 hour ago. I find the water on the stove and the dinner cooking, and I say, Johnny, you're in luck, mon vieux. Your friend Albert is suspect you!
However, in spite of the goofy accent, I'd be lying if I said I didn't enjoy watching him. Olivier always has a great presence and charm that he brings to his performances, even the weaker ones. The Nazis also come across a bunch of Germans who are also living in Canada. And at first they assume that these must be allies. And so Lieutenant Hirth gives them this big inspiring speech about how great things will be once the Nazis take over the world. But, in a rather embarrassing moment, he comes to the realization that these Germans do not support Hitler. And in fact, they came to Canada to escape all the horrible things going on in their own country. Again, this movie is not black and white. It shows that not all Germans are bad, and many of them hated what Hitler was doing just as much as the rest of the world. And again, considering that this film was made during World War II, it was a very brave move. There's the character of Philip, played by Leslie Howard, a writer who they come across in the Canadian Rockies. Here the Nazis are portrayed as immature children, burning Philip's art and his book. And as we all know, burning books was something that the Nazis did a lot. Leslie Howard does a fantastic job, and has probably my favorite line in the entire movie.
Well, he had a fair chance. One armed Superman against one unarmed, decadent Democrat. I wonder how Dr. Goebbels will explain that.
Finally, Lieutenant Hirth, the last remaining Nazi, boards a train headed across the border into the US. There he meets a Canadian soldier named Brock, played by Raymond Massey, who is frustrated with the way that his government has treated him. After revealing himself as a Nazi, Hirth tries to almost convert Brock over to his side, stating that it's not the Canadian people that the Nazis hate, but their government. But Brock rebels, saying that with the democracy that they have in Canada, they have the right to be fed up. But all that would be gone if Canada came under the control of the Nazi Empire. I find it very interesting that the most famous actors in this movie are pretty much guest stars. The stars of the movie are the Nazis, played by actors who aren't completely unknown by any means, but aren't anywhere near as big. But in spite of that, everybody does a fantastic job, whether their parts be small or big. The film is wonderfully shot, boasting many beautiful shots of the Canadian countryside. The film can almost be viewed as a Canadian tourism commercial that also happens to have good acting, solid writing, and powerful themes. Oh, and did I mention that the editor of this movie was David Lean? Yeah, that's right, that David Lean. I really like this movie, and it's one that I often watch on Canada Day. I'm going to give 49th Parallel an 8 out of 10.